Good morning, guys, and welcome to the podcast. Happy holidays. We're recording this during the latter half of month of December. And so I want to start off with this question. If you could meet somebody that is a recreational mathematician and programmer working on upgrading capitalism for the computer age, today's guest is none other than Noah Healy, and coming from Charlottesville, Virginia. And today we're going to talk about the intersection of economics, artificial intelligence, mathematics. I'm really excited because these are the areas and topics that I'm interested in: entrepreneurship, future, and innovation. So, Noah, welcome.
Thanks for having me here, Christopher.
Yeah. Briefly introduce yourself, your story, and I'm really excited to dive into this conversation.
Sure. Noah Healy from Charlottesville. You'd mentioned that already. I've been working as a programmer on and off for the last quarter century and studying computational mathematics that entire time, and been very interested in how to actually extract some kind of value from these computers that we decided to build billions of and spread all over the planet. So about a decade ago, I was working on a problem in networked communication, a little on the esoteric side, and I found an approach combining topology, calculus, and game theory and programming, and found this new way to think about these kinds of problems. And one of the results of that was developing a new engine as a market model. And so I've been spreading the word around that around the world, and also fighting with the US government about the patent, which is now in federal court.
Yeah, interesting. And I've always been fascinated with computer science, economics, and this age because it's like the asset Bitcoin came out of this, and really interesting. We'll leave your legal troubles aside, but talk about just what do you do? And I'm really excited to actually hear about your thoughts about just economics, artificial intelligence, entrepreneurship. Start off with that, and we'll dive deeper into the questions.
Economics is, to some extent, and in particular finance, is a computational technology that we developed before we realized that there were computational technologies. That was actually the real turning point. Mechanization of computing goes back centuries. It was a Charles Napier, I think it was, that invented logarithms. It might have been John Napier, I'm sure about. He developed a number of other tools. Then we get into other machine systems for doing calculation that finance and economics have been picking up. But one of the core technologies is that the old style marketplace could actually make decisions better than human beings could. So the standard stock and commodity markets of the 17th and earlier centuries were an early form of superintelligence. And we've been taking our modern forms of superintelligence, these AI tools that we've developed, and we've been plugging them into these old forms. And that's one of the things that's led to all the destabilization we've seen economically around the world, is that the old systems are not up to snuff with the new systems, just as old style of road building can't handle modern cars and trucks. And we needed to develop new kinds of roads, railroads, and so on to deal with the engines of the industrial age. We're going to have to develop the new forms of those things. And to me, that is the most important form of entrepreneurialism that's available to us today, is finding these new tools and devices that will enable us to work with the systems that we have built.
Mm. Yeah, and I'm not a big fan of Trump, but hopefully he comes in and cleans house, makes the government more efficient, and makes the U.S. a leader again, and makes it more pro-business, pro-innovation, as opposed to the kind of the stagnation that we had over the last 10, 15 years. When we talk about just upgrading, sounds like with computer science, technology, networks, artificial intelligence, these are like the building blocks of upgrading our systems and networks, quantum computing. Where do you see like the biggest problems to be solved, and the work that you're doing? Where do you see their biggest impact?
I'd say the biggest problem to solve is alignment. Finding ways to make these things actually do what we want them to do is very challenging. Anyone that has played around with the public forms of generative AI will have pretty rapidly found that you can get things that have a certain degree of polish very easily, but it is relatively difficult to get if you start getting precise about the kinds of edits that you're looking for or the kinds of pictorial changes you want, it pretty rapidly starts spreading off the rails and going someplace else. And that's true for other deeper problems as well. In particular, going to marketplaces, the thing that made marketplaces so valuable as this super intelligent technology like 50 years ago is that the market was on average smarter than any of the players in the marketplace. But with the rise of high net worth individuals being able to purchase entire supercomputers and applying these new kinds of technologies, it's now possible to outsmart the marketplace. And that's the issue. And so you need an even stronger aligned market that can be the smartest thing in the room most of the time, even in a world where Jeff Bezos owns some enormous fraction of the computing power on Earth, and other people could buy that if they wanted to. This doesn't just apply to the financial system. The medical system also has pretty serious alignment issues. We, this is an example I bring up a lot, but we know for a fact that we can build a machine that can read X-rays radically more accurately and in radically greater depth than we can train a human being to read X-rays. But because of the way that we train that machine, it really can't be trusted to actually do the job of reading X-rays. And we actually deploy some of these things and they help maybe, but in some cases they actually hinder because trained professionals have to take a look at the machine. They can't evaluate what the machine is actually saying when they disagree with it. So when they disagree with it, is it because they're wrong and the machine's right? In which case we would want them to substitute the machine's judgment for their own. Or is it because the machine wasn't trained in a way that makes it trustable, and this is a beyond the pale decision, in which case they should substitute their decisions for the machines. And we do this right now, and it's increasing costs, which is great for the insurance company and the hospital, not so great for the doctors and the patients. And working out the actual incentive structure around service provision, whether it's medical or financial or otherwise, allows us to integrate these machines into those processes. And without that, we still have a pretty serious trust problem.
Yeah. Sounds like the biggest kind of these legacy industries, especially the financial or educational and healthcare, these are like the remaining industries to crumble and get disrupted, which I hope to see in my lifetime, and the political system as well. Then the next question I have for you is what's interesting, really interesting. And what I love is I ask this of all guests, and because I see the beautiful library you have in your background. And for those who are on audio that are listening to this, you can check out the video in the YouTube links below. But what are you reading, and what's novel, what interesting ideas, authors that you would recommend?
This is mostly fantasy and science fiction behind me. So there are some interesting ideas that can come out of some of those subjects. I can always recommend Terry Pratchett, but what I'm actually currently reading is a book called Counterexamples in Topology, where it's this catalog of topological classes and various spaces that violate this part of that thing, but not that part of this thing. And some of those kinds of structures to give you a new intuition of the way sets can fit together. And I'm sorry, I can't recommend that for general audiences. There's a lot of prep work you have to do. I'm still trying to work my way up into kind of fully wrapping my head around the ideas in that book. But that's what I can recommend is that find those things that blow your mind, because as best we can tell, that's like the only thing that actually keeps your brain young, makes you smarter, gives you something, is something that just shows you that your perspective is wrong and how it's wrong and what else you need to be able to look at to understand things that are right.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. To finish it out, what I found was interesting is you've developed a commodity market design to make production more profitable and economy stronger. Just talk about what that is. It's called CoreDisc, but I'm just curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so my company is called CoreDisc. I call the idea coordinated discovery markets. And thinking about AI again, you should be able to ask most of the generative AI is what coordinated discovery markets are and get a reasonable explanation. But essentially, the existing market functions by recognizing that a deal involves a buyer and a seller agreeing on a price. And so what they do is they take that contract and they tear it in half and say, okay, the buyer, you write up your half of your contract, and seller, you write up your half of your contract, and I'll get a lot of buyers, a lot of sellers. I'll look at a lot of half contracts, and I will find the ones where you both agreed on a price together, and then I'll just sew that together and stick it up on the board and announce it to everybody. And you guys just agreed. Like you don't have to meet each other or shake hands. Like I did that all for you. You've just agreed. Party A give party B that much money. Party B give party A that much stuff. Done. Two people, that seems as simple as it gets, but there's three things in this story. There's a price and there's an intent of an amount to buy and an intent of an amount to sell. And so I found a way to pull that contract into three pieces. And while it's a little bit more complicated to get the three pieces put back together, computers can do all of that for us. So something that might have taken human beings days or weeks and not really been useful, the computer can do in a handful of microseconds. And by doing it this way with the three pieces instead of the two pieces, it becomes possible to segregate the middleman into a marketplace where they are working for the buyers and sellers instead of against the buyers and sellers. And so the middlemen make more money, the more money the buyers and sellers are making, instead of, as it currently stands, creating this kind of growing wedge between the buyers and sellers, where the further apart we can pry the marketplace, the more money there is in it for people that are doing the prying. And so that's the core idea of how it all puts together.
Mhm. How can people find you and learn more about you and reach out to you?
The easiest way to reach out to me is through my email, noahphealy@yahoo.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Noah Healy there. Also, you'd mentioned the company's name is CoreDisc. There's a website, coredisc.com, that has some data on it. And like I said, search engines and generative AI will be happy to tell you more about what I'm up to.
Yeah, excellent. And thank you so much for coming on, and happy holidays. And for the audience, be sure to check out the links. The YouTube video podcast is on there as well. And thanks so much and keep up the great work.